Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York City, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, and welcome to Makeover Monday. Makeover Monday. On Monday, you know what we do, people, if you're new to the show, we think about how we want to upgrade our week. What we want to do to let go of, what we want to let go of, right? And what we want to embrace, what we want to add to our week. We take life in little bits and chunks, and we try to digest them. You know, people say, one day at a time. We say 1 week at a time. 1 week at a time. What can I do this week? And a lot of people are new to this path of bhakti, and whenever there's paths of refinement of consciousness, there's going to be some like restriction of our old habits that didn't serve us. So some people are new and they're becoming vegetarians or vegans, and that's a huge step. And I want to acknowledge everybody who's like literally trying to change themselves by changing what they put in their mouth. Some people cut off junk food or white sugar. Some people are spending more time outside. Some people are trying to add some extra spiritual study to their life, extra meditation to their life. And we do it in a week, and we evaluate our week, see how it goes. And if we feel, that was powerful, then we set it up for the next week. Sometimes we try and we fall. And you know what? There's always a new Monday, which I forgot to play the Monday song today.
That's okay.
Usually I play the Mamas and the Papas Monday on Monday. But I've realized that song is sort of it's against Monday, I think. I don't think it's a pro Monday. But they harmonize so well that it makes Monday sound good. Anyway.
Okay.
How are you, Kaustubha? All good for your Monday?
Yeah, sure. Yesterday was the last day of Kartik, so we wound that up, right?
Yeah, it was the last day of the sacred month of Kartik. We had the full moon. That's how you can tell when the month's over, the massive moon. Mm. And it was special. We sang. I worked outside.
Now back into the routine.
Take
something from it,
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so we are in the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam.
We are.
And we are in chapter 9.
Correct.
Answers by citing the Lord's version.
Mm-hmm.
The title of the chapter that sounds like an incomplete sentence. And what text are we on, brother?
We have read 1 through 3, so we are currently on text number 4. I suggest we read text 4 through 8, just just read them. And then
but first, if you don't mind, I'm going to chant the magic mantras! Narayanam namaskritya naranchayva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki, by regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee. All that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Kaustubha.
Yeah?
Guess who I have for next week's guest?
I don't
tell
know.
you. I was just going to surprise you.
Okay, you're going to spring it on me now?
You know him, but
Okay.
he's I'd say the foremost knowledge of Vedic wisdom about UFOs.
True to karma?
Yep.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Did a book called Forbidden Archaeology, all about all these anomalies they find when they're digging through the earth, and they find like in rock. I'm no archaeologist, in case you didn't know that already. But, they're digging in rock strata like that should be like whatever 20 million years old, but they find a child's doll. And when they find these, it's like, wait a second, there's no human species that should be living at this time. What do we do with this human doll? It doesn't fit in with our theory of evolution. And so it's like, wait, what was that movie? Raiders of the Lost Ark? They put it in the anomaly box and they file it in the storage containers. He's like this guy. He compiles lists of stuff like this, things that just don't fit in. He's got lists, and he's been doing this for a while. He's an older man, and he's, anyway, he's got some interesting info. I'm going to pick a brain next week. UFO Day, next Sunday. Kaustubha was like, why don't you tell me? Why do you
just bring these things on me?
Because I'm going to get everybody attached to the UFOs, and it's going to be our biggest show ever.
I don't mind talking about the UFOs. I'm happy to talk about that.
You don't mind talking about UFOs?
Not at all. It just has to be done in the right context. That's all. And it should be done like at a certain times and not like all the time. That's all.
They're everywhere. Hello. I just watched that octopus movie last night on Netflix.
See, here we go. It's like,
I'm serious. This is an incredible movie. The Octopus, My Teacher.
I heard about that octopus movie. It's good.
The Octopus, My Teacher.
What's the point about the octopus movie? What's going on there?
Just you gotta learn. First of all, they're incredible beings, octopus. They're just incredible beings. And they're otherworldly, man. They are otherworldly beings.
But was there something about the film that like revealed something that you
want the God honest truth, Kaustubha?
No. It wasn't.
I fell asleep. Because I fall asleep if I watch anything at night. That's why the only thing I'm qualified to do at night is like jiu-jitsu, where I won't fall asleep. All right, let's get into this, man. I'll just get tangential on you. All right, so you want to go back and read what text?
Not go back, but we can. Well, I mean, okay, we can go back. Well, let's read the first 3 verses quick, and then.
Gotcha. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, "O king, unless one is influenced by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no meaning to the relationship of the pure soul in pure consciousness with the material body. That relationship is just like a dreamer's seeing his own body working. The illusioned living entity appears in so many forms, offered by the external energy of the Lord. While enjoying in the modes of material nature, the encaged living entity misconceives thinking in terms of I and mine. Mm-hmm. As soon as the living entity becomes situated in his constitutional glory and begins to enjoy the transcendence beyond time and material energy, he at once gives up the 2 misconceptions of life, I and mine, and thus becomes fully manifested as the pure self."
Okay.
Now, so this is the old story of I had a dream, and I'm experiencing great pain in the dream. I'm suffering in dream. I'm in this prison in the dream. I'm crying. And sometimes we've had these dreams where we're crying. We're waking up and we're crying. Or sometimes we have these dreams where we're waking up, we're deeply in love with some person that we just fabricate in our brain that doesn't even exist. We're like feeling love. And then sometimes we're having a dream that we have so much power or wealth, or like, this is incredible. And then you wake up, oh, it's just me. Or it's like there is no love.
How about you're being chased?
Or I'm being chased And so the answer is, what do you do with that? Like, how do you get rid of the pack of dogs that's chasing you in the dream that's causing your heart to race? Like, your heart is actually racing. You're actually sweating. You're actually maybe even crying. What do you do with that? How do you escape from the dream? Do you pick up a dream, Mossman, 20, 500 shotgun and start shooting all the wolves? No. You will just wake up from the dream. My pain in this world is created in my dreamlike reality of the temporary. And even the greatest pain we experience is temporary. In the same way the greatest joy we experience is temporary. There's a sadness with that, isn't it? Like when you see a beautiful flower blooming, there's like a sadness with that. Like it's going to wilt very soon. It only lasts. The lilacs only last for a short time. The tulips only last for, there's like a sadness in the bud.
You should write a little song about that, Rugger.
There's a sadness in the bud.
Melancholy. Of course, not so good for the melancholy kind of stuff.
Yeah. We need Kelly Clips to do that.
That's right. Okay, so now we're going to read 5 verses. And these verses are going to go back to the beginning of the history of the universe. They're going to talk about Lord Brahma. We've mentioned quite a few times in the past about how Garbhodakshai Vishnu, Lord Vishnu, is lying within the universe on the water. From his navel sprouts the lotus. Upon that lotus appears Lord Brahma, the first being, besides Lord Vishnu in the universe. And it becomes his responsibility. He has a service to do. He's got devotional service to do for Lord Vishnu. But imagine waking up on that lotus flower and there's no sun, right?
Yeah.
So it's dark. Right? It's dark.
Very dark.
It's dark. There's nobody there. You're sitting there literally and figuratively in the dark, trying to understand. And the first thing that one does is you try to trace out your source. Where am I coming from? What am I connected to? Lord Brahma is going to do that. And he's going to get an instruction. And he's going to carry out that the instruction is going to come through the form of mantra. He's going to carry out that instruction and meditate on that mantra. And then he's going to get a vision. And so that's what we're going to read about right here.
Kaustubha, maybe this is an analogy or metaphor for us.
It
born
is.
In the dark.
That's why I was bringing all that out. Exactly. It's like we're all in that circumstance in a sense. Like if we're not in the dark, literally, in the dark figuratively,
sure.
and to get that vision of our source and that reconnection to our source, it's done through mantra. Prabhupada uses the word penance here a lot, but I think we can understand that in the sense that like he sat down, he did his meditation, he focused on that, he sacrificed his time and his energy to focus on his meditation in the mood. And this becomes really important here. His mood, or you could say his motive, was pure in doing this. He wasn't doing it to get something for himself. He wasn't doing this to escape something. He was doing this ultimately to please Lord Vishnu. And that motive was pure, and therefore his penance became effective. And then he received that vision of the form of Krishna. And then he has a conversation with Krishna. And it's a very interesting conversation. And he receives in 4 verses the condensed form of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. He offers his first prayers in this. I find this really fascinating. In this chapter, Lord Brahma is going to offer the very first prayers in the universe. What are those prayers? They must be very significant. True?
Most significant.
and then he receives further instruction. It's a really fascinating chapter. So right now we're going to read these 5 verses that are going to talk about those first moments. Well, it really turns into hundreds of thousands of years. But those first, that first engagement, that first meditation, that first devotional service in the universe.
Can I ask you a question? It's my own question here.
Yes.
If the Bhagavatam is now encapsulated in 4 verses, the Chatur Sloki, the 4 verses, it's the original Bhagavatam. It was done in 4 verses. Lord Brahma spoke them. If the essence of the Bhagavatam is to hear and speak about Lord Krishna, it's not put in those 4 verses. how could it be the real Bhagavatam then?
Well, let's get to those 4 verses and find out.
Well, all right. And Jason Stice says, so Vishnu is the guru of Brahma. What would you say to that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's correct. And in a sense, Krishna is. You could say Krishna is. Krishna.
He's the Adi Guru.
He's the Adi Guru,
the original guru.
Yeah. Then from Brahma to Narada, from Narada to Vyas, from Vyas to Sukadeva Goswami, from Sukadeva Goswami to Sutta and all the sages, and it goes down that way.
And that's why when one of us purely repeats the message, you're acting like a guru in one sense. You might not be a pure guru, you might have material desires, but when you purely, and that's why when you meet somebody, a lot of times, a lot of us were turned on to spiritual life by people who weren't necessarily pure.
Sure.
But they spoke and maybe even they tried to live and they had some type of sincere intention, which was Kaustubha was saying earlier, and that wore off on you. It hit you. It changed because they're passing something transcendental down. And that's why you have to hear this stuff in a disciplic succession. And then you're hearing. Why? Because you're actually hearing from the Adi Guru, the original guru, which is Krishna.
Then it's got potency.
It's got real potency.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just hear from people who they read it and they interpret it and stuff like that. It means that, and it's like a electric socket. Like in this house, there's some electric sockets that they're from the old electric of the house, and they don't work any longer. So you have the electric socket, and it doesn't do anything. So you can go through all the formalities of some, maybe even some mantras or some rituals, but they don't have that same effect. That's why I listen to you, Kaustubha.
That's why I listen to you, Raghunath. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Text 4.
Text 4. The king, O king, the personality of Godhead, being very much pleased with Lord Brahma because of his non-deceptive penance in Bhakti-yoga, presented his eternal and transcendental form before Brahma. And that is the objective goal for purifying the conditioned soul.
Okay, so he did this non-deceptive penance in Bhakti Yoga.
Sure.
And then he saw the form of Krishna. Okay, next text.
Lord Brahma, the first spiritual master, supreme in the universe, could not trace out the source of his lotus seat. Like, where am I even getting my seat from?
Where did this flower come from?
The heck? And while thinking of creating the material world, he could not understand the proper direction for such creative work, nor could he find out the process of such creation.
What am I meant to do? Right?
Who am I? What am I doing? Where is my chair coming from? These are the original questions of life.
Where did my chair come from? And what am I meant to do? And how am I meant to do it? So yeah, what is my source? These are fundamental, right? This is what human life is meant for, right? What is my source? What am I?
Why am I sitting on a giant flower?
Where'd the flower come from? And what am I meant to do? And how should it be done?
Yeah. While thus engaged in thinking in the water, Brahmaji heard twice from nearby two syllables joined together. What?
He heard 2 syllables twice.
While thus engaged, I'm going to read that again. While thus engaged in thinking in the water, Brahmaji heard twice from nearby 2 syllables joined together. Does that make sense?
He heard twice. Maybe a comma would have helped, from nearby, 2 syllables joined together.
Okay, there we go. One of the syllables was taken from the 16th and the other from the 21st syllable of the Sparsha alphabets, and both joined to become the wealth of the renounced order of life. So that's sort of written in code. Tapa. Tapa is the wealth of the renounced.
Tapas.
Tapas. These are the wealth of the brahmanas, meaning renunciation.
Practice of austerity.
In the same way, people think, jewels, diamonds, rubies are a great type of wealth, or they think that have a big piece of property is wealth, or they think lots of surrounded by beautiful people or fame is wealth. There's another type of wealth, and that's called to renounce, to be detached from things.
Yeah, or to actually, even more specifically here, it means to perform austerity. Right?
The austerity becomes the wealth of the Brahminical class. And there's a great type of joy when no one can control you because you're detached.
Including your own mind and senses.
Including your own mind. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, when I first realized that power, in India in the old days, you have to walk, you're going out into the street to go into the village, and all the rickshaw guys come around you. And it's only, back then it was like 3 rupees to get a rickshaw to the town.
Okay.
Because you go like this, you go, 3 rupees. You have to bargain, and Americans aren't used to bargaining. It's like, I'll do this 3 rupees, and the guy's like 10 rupees. And they're like, no, I'm not going to give you 10 rupees. I'll give you 3 rupees, 5 rupees, 5 rupee. No, 3 rupees. And then they're like, no. And you're like, okay, fine, I'll walk. Once you say, I'll walk, once you're completely detached, then okay, 3 rupees. So it's in that renunciation, that the ability to say, I'm just going to walk, I'm good with that. In that detachment, you gain your power. So that is a type of opulence also, though.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because it's a fact. There's something about bargaining that I think is healthy in society, right? It makes you, like in America, when we go into a store, the price is set.
Yeah.
One sense is convenient, but in another sense, like, there's a whole world of human interaction that doesn't play out, that helps a person develop their own spine, and helps, gets people talking with each other and communicate. You know what I'm saying?
Imagine if we are at Walmart. It's $15 for that ironing board, sir. I'll give you 14.
15.
I'm sorry, it's 15. Every time they swipe a product, you're bargaining over it.
Yeah, I shop here all the time, but because my wife and I, we've been reading up, because I just moved into this neighborhood where Prabhupada was living, in those very early days where he was kind of struggling on his own. And there's some stuff written about that time, and we're reading about this one little it's like a little corner store called the West Side Superette, and it describes how Prabhupada would go there to buy his spices, and it's so cool because I can go there and buy. Is it still
spices,
there? Yeah, it's not called. It has a different name, but the store's still there.
Okay.
But it's described that Prabhupada would go in, and because of course the prices between India, especially then, were so drastically different in a place, what to speak of not just America but New York City, where like things are like real expensive, Manhattan. And so it said that Prabhupada would go in there and he'd like kind of try to bargain with the people about like, he's buying some salt or pepper or whatever he's buying. It's like so expensive, And Prabhupada's like, okay, he's trying to cheat. He must be trying to cheat me with that price. It's so expensive.
Yeah, let's bring back bargaining.
Okay.
It drives me insane, truthfully. Okay. I'll pay more. Just fix the price, please. All right. Text 6. While thus engaged in thinking in the water. So
text 7. Yeah.
Wait, Prabhu, so he's underwater?
Well, the flower's on the water, I suppose, right?
I don't know. I mean,
the lotus just grows out of the water. I assume that that's what it means.
Okay. When he heard the sound, he tried to find the speaker. So he heard tapas. Yes. When he heard the sound, he tried to find the speaker, searching on all sides. But when he was unable to find anyone beside himself, he thought it wise to sit down on his lotus seat firmly and give his attention to the execution of penance as he was instructed. Lord Brahma, text 8. Lord Brahma underwent penances for 1,000 years by the calculations of the demigods. That's a long time.
Yeah,
that's not 1,000 years for you.
It's hundreds of thousands of years.
Hundreds of thousands of years. And so he instinctually knew to do penance?
Well, I mean, it seems like that, doesn't it? Like he heard the words, he understood what they meant, and just perhaps it's like those baby turtles, it's like, okay, I got to do penance now.
Yeah.
And he did it, obviously he did it for a very long time. It mentions firmly, right? I wonder what the word is here in Sanskrit.
Well, a little baby, a newborn baby will go right for the mother's
breast.
Teat? Can you say teat for a woman? No. You go right for the mother's teat. But it's instinctual.
It is.
Yeah, so there is some instinct there in this human species. I guess a part of our growth is to try to get back to more instinct, you know? Okay. Lord Brahma underwent penances for 1,000 years by the calculations of the demigods. He heard this transcendental vibration from the sky and accepted it as divine. Thus, he controlled his mind and senses, and the penances he executed were a great lesson for the living entities. Thus, he is known as the greatest of all ascetics.
Okay.
By the way, I think these words got translated. I think Prabhupada tried to appease us because he used a lot of these Christian words like penance. That's like a Catholic. It's one of the Catholic samskaras, penance, to receive penance and confirmation. But penance. The translation is tapas, right? It's austerity, meaning you take on some type of impingement on the senses for some higher good.
Yeah.
So sitting in meditation, right?
Yeah.
That's a penance.
That was his penance. Yeah, I mean, we don't hear about him, for instance, like asking for forgiveness for his sins or something like that, which is generally what we think of as penance. So,
if there's any Christians or Catholics listening on Zoom, remind me what they do for penance. I can't remember.
I'm
like-
sure they do different things.
Huh? I
They
can't
do all
remember.
kind of things.
Do you know?
Well, I mean, you have these guys that whip their backs. You got people like that. That's
No,
like these
I didn't
extreme
whip my.
forms
I
of-
was Catholic. I didn't whip my
No,
back.
but you do have people that do that. They have the, but people do all kinds of
No, but you have to do
Penance-
something to get
well, I'll tell you
officially penanced in Catholic Church when
you
you're
mean
like
after
11.
confession.
Huh? No, that's
After-
that's confirmation. That's the next
No,
one.
not confirmation is a particular ritual, but with when you would confess after confession, you would have to do some penance. And what it usually was when I was a kid was they would ask you to say so many Hail Marys and so many Our Fathers, and that was it.
All the Italians and Irish are getting on the message board right now. Their 2 cents. Okay, let's go. Let's go on.
People do all kind of things. Yeah.
They do all
Okay.
types of things.
But so now let's go back now, and let's look at the commentary to text 4. All right, let me read some of this, and
Sure.
we can speak with this. But remember, if we look at that verse again to text 4, it said that that Krishna was pleased, very much pleased with Lord Brahma because of his non-deceptive penance in Bhakti Yoga. Right? It uses the term avyalika, without any deceptive motive, vrata, adrataha. He worshipped with a vow, right? Without any deceptive motive, and that becomes really key here. That's really the different. We can be engaged in yoga, engaged in bhakti. It's really about purifying the motive. Like that's where, if we read the Bhagavatam and we understand it in context of the entire yoga tradition, then we can see that really, our motive is the one thing that's truly ours. Our body is actually not even truly ours, but to speak of our wealth or our home or our family or our nation or all these things, those are all transitory. And even our power to accomplish a particular task is something that's granted to us and can be taken away from us at any moment. What to speak of the results of those activities. None of that is truly ours. What is truly ours, what is granted to us as truly ours, is our motive, and the purity of that motive is really where bhakti and yoga in general is meant to take us. That it's the purification, you can say the distilling of one's motive. Ultimately, that motive has to reach the point of pure love.
How do you purify your motive?
You purify by practicing bhakti yoga. And very consciously, reflecting on this kind of thing as you live your life and take up your duties and your responsibilities and perform practices of meditation that are meant to purify the mind. That mind, it's stuck on ideas that my happiness is found through this and found through that. And so therefore, like the primal motives, you could say, are fit under a category that we call karma. That means I can act to get something that's going to please my body and my senses. I look at the world. I think this world is meant for me to enjoy. That's not what Brahma was thinking, right? He was thinking like, what's my duty here to my source,
Right.
right? But we think we have this body with its senses. We identify with the body and the senses. We look at the world and we say, there are resources here to satisfy my body and senses and mind. Let me pursue that. And that fits under the category of karma. And even the Vedic literature says, if that's your viewpoint, it's not very elevated, but do it in a pious way that connects you with appreciation for the gods and ultimately God. That's called karma. That's one motive. Now, a more refined motive is the motive that would fall under the category of jnana, or you could say where the goal is mukti or liberation. You know what? I'm more advanced than these karmis. I recognize what they don't recognize, that all the material enjoyment that you pursue in this world comes along with pain and suffering and loss, etc. That's the formula, and that's how things work in the material world. I've had enough of that. I'm going to turn my back on the material things in life, renounce them. I want freedom. Freedom from the sufferings of the world is my motive, and that's called jnana. But bhakti is the third, and that's the purest motive, where it's not like I'm not moving in this world to satisfy my body and senses. I'm not renouncing this world to try to escape the sufferings of it. I see it all as God's energy. I see myself as a servant of God. I see pure love as my aim, right? Pure love becomes my motive and my aim. And so I want to distill my consciousness, remove it from any karmic or organic influences, remove it from the motive of enjoying this world or escaping this world, and come to reality, which is ultimately I have this divine connection. And so that's what Brahma was pursuing here. And so let's read this commentary, and let me read a bit from it. And
Can I barge for a moment?
Barge right on in.
Just hearing you explain that and then like thinking while you're talking. Ever do that? Someone's talking to you and you're just thinking about something else.
Done that before.
I was listening though, but I was also thinking, because my question was, how do you purify? Because this is the point of the whole thing we're reading today is what is the agenda? What is is it a pure agenda? Is it a clean agenda? And that intention really is everything. Yeah. So I was thinking, well, how do you purify your agenda? And as your initial statement, I think rang true. You just got to think about this stuff deeply. And then we talked about karma and jnana and bhakti is the highest. But truthfully, here we are on Zoom and on, and the others out there. But we may be, I'm into bhakti. But I'm also, my agenda might not be pure yet.
It blended.
It's mixed. It's mixed. It's mutt and mixed. So I'm feeling like, how do you purify that? And what you said initially made a lot of sense. Because what makes a person have a pure agenda and not? It's not something necessarily you can see. Publicly, I can wear a costume, I can wear a robe, I can have a hairdo, I can chant the proper beads. But unless I've completely lost faith in material hope. It sounds bad, doesn't it? But no, you actually have to, like, with your deep contemplation, you have to lose faith in materialism.
That's right.
That the things of this material world, and you can't force that on a person. That has to come from deep contemplation, hearing sacred literature, maybe journaling, meditation, and then that stuff starts to come. And sometimes just the way where we are in life, that may not come for decades, if not lifetimes. It takes, there's that, what's that beautiful verse? After many births and deaths. Bahunam janamam te gyanavamam prapadyate vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sadurlabha. After many births and deaths, one who's in full knowledge sees me as the source of, what is it? Sees me as
everything.
Everything.
Vasudeva sarvamiti.
Sees me as everything, the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. So after many births and deaths, we get to this point where, like, there is no material hope. All there is spiritual life. And it seems like we're coming into this world with this type of karma where we're just like, we are deeply connected from lifetimes of previous practice, or we're attracted to this stuff, but come on, there's other great hope out there. So I wonder if the process of bhakti accelerates that.
Well, bhakti involves two things, and this is now that we've ended the Kartik month, but there's one essential lesson that's taught through. I mean, there's many essential lessons, but one I'm going to speak of one that's taught through that Leela, that pastime of Mother Yashoda tying up her little boy Krishna, right? Who's he everything's within him. How can you tie him up? But so it's said that she was, he was being naughty. She was running around trying to tie him up. She finally caught him. She breaks out some rope and she's going to tie him up. And but she finds that the rope's too short, right? So she's okay. I need to add some rope to this. So she ties another rope to that rope to extend the length, and it's still too short. And she continues with this process, and somehow mystically, no matter how much rope she extends, it's still too short. And each time it's too short by the same amount, right? Which is also unusual. But it said it was the width of 2 fingers too short. And so the commentators, some of the great bhakti commentators on this have said that those 2 fingers represent something. Mara, do you know? Should I put Mara? Put her on the hot seat? No? Raghu, you know that one?
Well, I always say love and devotion, but there's 2 other things too.
It's our own endeavor.
Our love is like a ship on the ocean. We are sailing in this cargo full of love and devotion. You know that song? And I'd like to know if you got the notion. That's a good song, man. That's like a bhakti yoga song from my childhood.
Yeah, okay. Back
to it. Who did that song?
I think there was a one-hit wonder.
Yeah, it was good. Sorry about that.
Those 2 things are the our own endeavor,
okay,
and the grace of God, the mercy of God, right?
Our own endeavor and the grace of God. Effort and mercy. Krishnangi said it. She got it right.
So in order to capture God, in a sense, as Yashoda was doing, it requires both of these, And it's interesting. I think I've mentioned this before, but in the Sri Sampradaya, in a very beautiful bhakti lineage, extended from South India, very ancient lineage, there's 2 kind of camps within that Sampradaya, 2 branches, you could say. And one of them is called the cats, and one of them is called the monkeys, right? Do you remember that? Yep. Do you remember why they're called cats and monkeys?
Yeah. No.
Okay. No. Because what they emphasize, one is more cat-like and one is more monkey-like. So the difference, what's the difference between the cat and the monkey? One difference is the way they carry the way the mother carries the child.
That's right.
Right. So with the monkey, and we don't see this in America so much, but with the monkey, it's like the baby monkey is hanging on by its own strength, right? It's underneath the mother monkey's going like on all fours, and the baby monkey is underneath hanging on by its arms and legs. So it's the own strength of the child that's keeping it there. Whereas with the kitten, the cat, it's the mother holds the baby cat right by that scruff of the neck. And it's all the mercy, right? All the grace of the mother. It has nothing to do with the individual endeavor of the kitten. And so one group in that sampradaya emphasizes more the idea of grace. And one group emphasizes the idea of one's own sadhana, one's own practice. And so in our own lineage is what the commentators said, based, in referring to this tying of the rope, and it's always being 2 fingers too short, that it requires both. It's almost like an equal emphasis on both. So when you were speaking about like how does one purify one's motive, which is really all that we're trying to do in bhakti, is come to that pure motive, the motive of pure love, no other separate motive. We were speaking in the context of one's own endeavor, and part of that endeavor is the contemplation of spiritual truth, which helps one lose faith in the material world, right? And so that one's motive becomes pure of material motive. But there's also the aspect of grace too,
Right. So it's the studying of the philosophy, the contemplation, the journaling, the practice of meditation. But then there's also the magical transference of grace.
But
well, it is, right? It's like a magical transference from pleasing great souls.
Yes, that's right. And so, for instance, let's say there's, what are the practices in Bhakti Yoga, and how do you distill that motive? Because again, we're distilling the motive. It means within our mind there are impressions. If our mind is a computer, then within that mind there's information downloaded on that computer that has us convinced of untruths, right? That has us convinced that I'm this body. It has us convinced that my happiness is come from satisfying the body. That has us convinced that these things will satisfy me and these things won't. There's all this that has us convinced of a certain identity, in terms of the body and all that the body is related to. So all that is false information. It's very deeply impressed within the mind. Bhakti Yoga has its way of, and based on that information, we have our motive, right? It may be karmic. I want to enjoy this world. It may be jnanic. I've had enough of this world. I'm sick of it. I want freedom from it. But based on that false information, we have one of these two impure motives. And so the practice of Bhakti Yoga is going to take that mind and it's going to try to harmonize that mind, reprogram that mind so it is entirely in tune with, in touch with, harmonious with our own true spiritual nature, which is one of purity and divine love. And so how do we do that? One way is by hearing and reflecting on these sacred teachings. Another way is through chanting mantra, right? It's through meditation on it, by bringing in that spiritual vibration, bathing the consciousness, bathing the mind on a regular basis in that mantra. And the more that mantra is also chanted with a pure motive, with at least the desire for the pure motive, then the more benefit that we receive from that. Then there's also ritual, right? Do you do daily ritual, Roland? He does. Okay. And that ritual is basically, it's also meditation. It's a way of bringing the mind to a very pure place so that the mind becomes accustomed to that pure place and the mind becomes satisfied in that pure place. And then there's seva itself, that we engage our mind, our body, our time in doing service and finding happiness in that. And then there's all the cultural arts, the music that we listen to, the art that we engage our mind in, even the architecture that we live within, and so on. That all of these things are combined. These are all involved in a very broad culture of bhakti that one immerses himself in, and through steady engagement in that motive can become purified. And I can see that you're fully engaged in the chat board, Raghunath. You're not even trying to hide it. And you're muted as well. You just totally checked out on me. Okay.
We are sailing in this cargo full of... Come on! So I'd like to know where you got the notion.
Okay, you've had your fun.
I always thought that was a spiritual song. All right, let's go on. Sorry.
Okay, purport. Atma Tattva. Atma Tattva, the truth about the Atma. Atma Tattva is the science of both God and the living entity. Both the Supreme Lord and the living entity are known as Atma. The Supreme Lord is called Paramatma, right? The Supreme Atma. And the living entity is called the Atma, the Brahma, or the Jiva. Both the Paramatma and the Jivatma, being transcendental to the material energy, are called Atma. So Shukadeva Goswami explains this verse with the aim of purifying the truth of both Paramatma and Jivatma. He wants us to understand them in truth, right? What is the Atma? What is the Paramatma? What are the similarities? What are the distinctions? This is called Sambandha Jnana. the knowledge of the relationship, right? What am I? What is God? How do we relate? And when we understand it clearly, it could be said that we have Atma Tattva. We have knowledge of the truth of both Atmas. So Shukadeva Goswami explains this verse with the aim of purifying the truth of both Paramatma and Jivatma. Generally, people have many wrong conceptions about both of them. The wrong conception of the Jivatma is to identify the material body with the pure soul. And the wrong conception of the Paramatma, and that's the karmic viewpoint that we spoke of, right? If I identify with the body and then my motive becomes to satisfy the body. And the wrong conception of the Paramatma is to think him on an equal level with the living entity. Both misconceptions can be removed, and that's a jnanic misconception commonly, or I am the Paramatma. There's no difference between me and the Paramatma. Both misconceptions can be removed by one stroke of Bhakti Yoga. Just as in the sunlight, both the sun and the world and everything within the sunlight are properly seen. Okay, so like if there's sunlight, if there's no sunlight, I can't see anything. When the sunlight shines, I can see the sun, I can see myself, and I can see the world in which I'm living in. And these are the three topics for jnana, right? One has to understand, in this analogy, the sun would be God, the self would be the self, and then there's the world around us. That when we have this Atma Tattva, when we understand, when we're free of misconceptions, then we see all three simultaneously. We understand all three simultaneously. In the 13th chapter of the Gita, that's all laid out right in the beginning. Okay. In the darkness, one cannot see the sun, nor himself, nor the world. But in the sunlight, one can see the sun, himself, and the world around him. Srila Shukadeva Goswami therefore says that for purification of both wrong conceptions, the Lord presented his eternal form before Brahmaji, being fully satisfied by Brahma's non-deceptive vow of discharging Bhakti Yoga. Now let's think about that, right? If Bhakti Yoga is the yoga of devotion, if Bhakti Yoga is the devotion of love, then what would make any expression of devotion or love deceptive?
Hidden motives.
Hidden motives, right?
Hidden motives.
So just like if someone were to...
Although, like, what would your motives be? If you're the only person in the universe, well, I guess he didn't. He had pure motives. It's like, it seems like once there's another person, then our motives come, because our ego comes in. We want to impress people. We want to feel validated by them, you know.
But just...
Yeah.
It's like, in other words, there's external expressions of love which are there in bhakti ritual, like for instance within puja, let me offer this flower, let me offer this lamb. Within kirtan, let me sing this song of devotion, right? And so on. These are external expressions of devotion, but are they deceptive? When I offer that, or when I sing that, is there a deceptive motive hidden deep within my motive, underneath the external expression? And so those motives may be karmic, they may be jnanic. What I want out of this, and think about this, and this is real important. It's just like if someone were to propose to you, right? With words of love and expressions of love, with a gentle caress and words of love. One says, I want to be with you. I want to marry you. I want to make you happy and satisfy you. I love you. So they're using these words and actions that are external expressions of devotion. But if we knew that person had a hidden motive, right? It was all about they wanted our money. Or it was all about they thought that they could get fame through marrying, or whatever it may be. Then all those external displays of so-called love, we would understand them as being empty, right? That is actually not love that this person is expressing, even though externally it seems to be love. Therefore, we say it's not bhakti when someone worships Ganesh with a motive of getting money. or my business doing well, which is the most common thing you can see
Right.
all over India, right? That's
People
not
might even
actually
call
bhakti.
people might even call it Ganesh Bhakti.
But it's
Okay.
it's not actually bhakti. You're right. And so again, let me read the sentence. Sri Shukadev Goswami therefore says that for purification of both wrong conceptions, the karmic and the jnanic conceptions, the Lord presented his eternal form before Brahmaji, being fully satisfied by Brahma's non-deceptive vow of discharging bhakti yoga. He had no ulterior motive. It was based on genuine affection. Except for bhakti yoga. And now this is a heavy sentence. We got to discuss this. Except for bhakti yoga, any method for realization of Atma Tattva or the science of Atma will prove deceptive in the long run. Right?
That seems so fanatical.
Does it or sectarian, right?
It seems sectarian, but you have to understand what we're talking about.
Yes, it's
right.
the idea.
When you really understand it, like when Prabhupada had that book that I always thought, like, this is so sectarian. Bhakti Yoga, the topmost yoga system. I was like, how could he say that? How dare he say that? And then, but the more you understand yoga, here I am, 22 years old, 20 years old, challenging the Swami. But then after a while, you start to realize, oh, actually, because nothing's higher than love. Nothing's higher than the motive of love. Of course, it's the topmost yoga system.
That's right.
Because that's what all the yoga systems are trying to get to, and they'll focus on your attachments, so you'll work through that attachment to finally let go of it. Because we are they're deeply woven into us, our material agendas, like so deep. And the only way to get out is this practice, this depth, this reading, like Kaustubha was saying, hearing on a regular basis, and meditation, and then of course the grace.
And of course the grace.
I like this.
Well, it's like, again, like here's the statement: except for bhakti yoga, any method for realization of Atma Tattva or the science of Atma will prove deceptive in the long run. The point is this: he's saying that within all spiritual traditions, you'll find the motives of karma, jnana, and bhakti. This is the point, right? It's not sectarian, because within Christianity, you're going to find people that approach it with a karmic motive, people that approach it with a jnanic motive, people that approach it with a motive of bhakti. Please don't sing any day by day right now. I saw it. I could see it in you. I saw it. Was I right? Did I read that? I did. And then with it, within Judaism, within Islam, within Buddhism, you're going to find these various levels of approach. This is why it's the pure non-sectarian thing, actually, because from let's say, as a practicing, Krishna Bhakta, someone may say to me, who's more close and dear to God, more advanced on their spiritual path? A person from, it would be common that someone would say, the person on my path, because this is the true path. But what the Krishna Bhakta, based on this understanding, says is that person with the purest motive from whatever path they're on, right? If my motives in approaching God are still clouded with material desire, still murked up, with desire for liberation, and I know that I have so far to go in the purification of that pure motive. But if I see a person from another tradition whose motive is entirely pure, then I say, actually, even though they're from a different path than me, they're actually closer to God than I am. And so if we understand in this context, we'll see that this statement is not at all sectarian. It's saying from whatever sect you come from.
Sure.
It's only when you're approaching with a pure motive of bhakti that you're actually that you're actually truly advanced.
Boom! Drop the mic. Good job.
All right, you too.
Thanks everybody for joining us today.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks everybody. We had, what episode was this? 303.
I think.
This is how we're ending the show today, guys. Get used to it. We're gonna have a little dance off.
I don't know. You're gonna make little Gopi dance to this song?
Oh yeah, I feel bad for little Gopi. All right. Come on, Gopi, open your mind. Oh, I lost my playlist.
Oliver Lamb Clark's getting into it.
What's that?
Oliver Lamb Clark was getting into it.
Yeah, thank you, Oliver.
Ah, there we go.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. If you want to join us live on Zoom, do it. It's more fun. You just got to email Mara at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com, and she will pass you on the bundle of secret codes.
Hey, Mara, is anything happening today on Patreon, or are we kind of like dead today?
No, we have Claire Weatherly's teaching an asana class at 10 a.m. and there's a Bhakti recovery group meeting at 1.
All right.
Bhakti Recovery Group. Join us on Patreon. Become a Patreon member. It's a community-supported podcast. Patreon.com/Wisdom of the Sages. No, it's Wisdom of the... What is it? Patreon.com/Wisdom of the Sages. Give a monthly donation and keep this boat floating. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Makes all the difference to me and my spiritual life for checking in and getting accountability. And remember, if you're on Patreon, go to your Makeover Monday board on the Discord thread and put up your makeover. It inspires us when we see people radically taking steps to upgrade their life. Thanks, everybody. Radhe.